In this lesson, I'm going to start to show you some drawing tools and how to apply some fills to some shapes we're going to insert. So let's go to Create New, Flash File. Let's bring up our tools and panels with F4. I'm going to move this down a little bit just to make the work area a little bit larger, and I made these more concise. Alright, first thing we're going to do is in our textual and shape drawing tools, we're going to choose the rectangle tool. And first thing we're going to notice is down here, as we begin to draw the rectangle, this is called the stroke. Or in other words, stroke is the same thing as a border, basically. So we can choose the type of stroke we want around the rectangle. Hairline, solid, and we'll experiment in a minute just to show you how cool some of those strokes are. And then the size of the stroke here. The fill color, interesting. So I'm going to choose, just at the get-go here, an orange. And that's, once I draw the rectangle, what color is it going to be filled in with? So we could choose to just make it white, but in this case I'm just chose that color. We notice over here in our options it shows the fill color also. So these two options are the same two options that are displayed here once we've chose the rectangle tool. So what we're going to do is we're just going to left click, hold down, and drag. And then release. And now you see how this corresponds to the options we chose before. Our fill color and our stroke color, black. So what if we wanted to change some of those options after we've drawn it? Well, easy. We go over to the Select tool, Selection tool, V is the shortcut. Now, in this case, we don't have to, it's going to also draw a rectangle like so, see? But there is nothing except this shape on our canvas. So we don't need to draw a perfect rectangle around this shape. As long as we are including the whole thing, left click and drag, as long as we've included the entire object that we need, that we want to modify, that's all that matters. So we don't need to get a perfect square around it. So then we release once we got it, and then you see all these little white dots that shows, okay, you've selected the rectangle you just drew, including its stroke or its border. Alright, now what we could do is we could decide to change our stroke. We could make it hairline, very small, dotted line. It all depends on the type of effect you want. And there's some interesting ones here, like this one. Let's take this one and make it a little larger. And it's almost like a sloppy outline is how I would describe this particular stroke. If you want to see what it looks like, we click outside the box, and there it is. Now if we want to reselect and modify it again, we do the same thing, like so. And this one's interesting, the little hairlines. I kind of like this one. It makes it look like a microchip. But alright, I'm going to reselect. And this one I think is interesting. Let's make this one a little bigger. Click outside the box. Interesting, huh? Alright. So depending on the effect you want, you have a lot of different options. Whoops, made a mistake there. So, alright. So I'm going to reselect the shape, because in this case I'm going to choose a more solid color, not as artsy. So I'm going to make it a little bit thinner, like so. And now I'm going to click out here. Now something else of note, might have to scroll up a little for this, is now that we've drawn that object, we can adjust the position of the object, and that's what XY coordinates are. You've probably heard that term before, XY. So basically, where on the canvas do you want it? So you could, rather than taking the hand tool, for instance, and moving around the canvas, the hand tool, I'm sorry, I apologize. The hand tool simply moves around the canvas, but if we want to move the object, we need the selection tool, like so. So you notice the coordinates are moving because we've selected the whole box. So you could, if you didn't quite get it where you wanted, you could manually adjust it here to a precise location on the canvas. Also, as far as adjusting the size of this, remember we mentioned this earlier, our modify, what's it called, free transform tool. So that's here under our selection devices. So free transform, and then once we select that, remember we had to have selected the box, when we know because we have all the little dots, the white dots. But once we have the free transform tool selected, it puts all these little anchor points around the object. So as we hover around the anchor point, it shows us, okay, we can stretch it out this way if we want it. Or take the corner and move it in smaller if we want it. If we hover outside the corner, you notice how it turns into a half circle with an arrow. What that means is we could rotate the object. So left click and drag, whichever direction we want. But I'm going to Control Z and bring it back a couple times back to where it was, like so. So that's the free transform tool. Now also we can adjust it here, the width and the height, right next to the XY coordinates. So if we wanted, let's say, an even number like 290, and then 125, we could make those precise adjustments. You notice it moved slightly to a larger height. And then, of course, click anywhere outside to deselect and see the object as it stands. So that's the first step. And then in the next lesson, we're going to do a little more with this object as far as applying a certain gradient to it and changing it into a specific object. So stay tuned for the next lesson.